The Seminoles, good snap from Shiver. Charlie has all kinds of time. Flushed out of the pocket, goes to his right, looks downfield, throws the ball downfield, has Brad Fire at the 40, fire at the 35, 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Florida, Stonewall.
Ward took another big shot, but he got the ball to Tamarick Vanover, and we'll see you tomorrow. Touchdown, Seminoles, 86 yards.
Welcome to the PlayCallers podcast, discussing current sports news and headlines behind the scenes of athletics and life after sports. We talk about the real stuff of the sports world, and anything goes. Are you ready? Let me introduce former NFL coach Kirk Broussard, former CFL coach and pro coach Chris Williams, and myself, Tracy Lynn. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you get your podcasts on all major platforms. Welcome to the PlayCallers podcast. Joining us in the panel today, we have Coach Kirk Broussard, always right beside me, and we have a guest of honor joining us, Charlie Ward, one of the greatest two-sport stars in the history of college athletics, is the only Heisman Trophy winner to play in the NBA. We can go on and on, Charlie, but I know that our time is limited with you. You are known as the superhuman being. You are known to many for so many reasons, and we all have memories. I want to start off by asking you, I kind of have a two-part question for you. The first one being, what was the deciding factor for you to choose the NBA over the NFL?
Well, really, I appreciate you guys having me on. Play caller. I guess I'll go back to my days of being a quarterback, but I guess one of the deciding factors was it's called job opportunity. You know, there was no job in the NFL, and they didn't allow me to. I wasn't drafted, so. God kind of closed that door. That was my prayer going through the whole process was, to make it clear, close the door and open the door. And he made it really, really clear for the NFL. He shut that door really, he shut it tight and then locked it. And so I didn't get an opportunity to be a part of the NFL. And so that's kind of the deciding factor.
Okay, now let's talk about your transition into retirement. Was it an easy transition for you? A professional sports guy. We're known. You're the best of the best. How was that transition into retirement?
Well, for me it was relatively easy because I had a knee injury that I wasn't able to come back from. I tried, but I just couldn't perform at a level that would allow me to, be productive. And so I ended up retiring. But I was grateful that I had, some people that I befriended over the years, like Coach Jeff Van Gundy. And once I got to a point where I was going to be moving on to whatever I was going to be doing next, which was coaching, he gave me an opportunity to be an intern with the Houston Rockets while I was there. And the first year was, once I got into it, I knew I would get involved, and I enjoyed it. And after my first year, doing the internship, Patrick Ewing left and went to another staff, and that opened up a spot there in Houston. And Coach Van Gundy gave me an opportunity to be on the staff, and that was my second year of coaching. And then it was time for Coach Van Gundy to move on, and I transitioned from going from the professional ranks to high school, basically due to flexibility in the schedule. I wanted to be home with the family a little bit more, have a little bit more of a flexible schedule. So that's how I got into high school coaching.
Coach Kirk Broussard, up next, questions for Charlie Ward.
Yeah, first, Charlie, I just want to say it's an honor to have you on. I know we initially connected when you were in Pensacola, there with Paul on the ESPN Pensacola radio, and you went on to coach at my high school, Washington High School, and we kind of connected there. And I got to be honest with you, man. I grew up a Florida. Well, how can I put this? Initially growing up in the Panhandle, I moved from New Orleans to the Panhandle. I initially started to like Florida State because that was most of the games that they showed in those neck of the woods. And one day, my uncle came home from the University of Florida, and he flipped me to being a Gator. But initially,
No, can't be
initially,
flipping.
yeah, initially, man, I watched all your games, and I was a Charlie Ward diehard, man. So to cross paths with you in the coaching world, that was an honor for me, and I'm sure you get that a lot from a lot of people in the Panhandle because that's Florida State territory.
I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
sorry you had to flip.
Yeah, my uncle came home and he said in this house we watch Gators on Saturday, and from that moment on, man, I was like 8 years old. I've been a Gator.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, great to have you on, and I follow what you're doing in coaching. And my first question I have for you, I wanted to ask you, from the outside eye of the fan, it always appeared that possibly, and I could be wrong, you always seem like more of an introvert type person. Am I wrong on that?
No.
And I wanted to ask you, when you started to get, your success in football at Florida State and all the Heisman Trophy attention, how was that transition going from, a person that seemed more reserved to a person that had to be in the public eye? How was that for you?
Well, it was relatively tough
Mhm.
because it was different, and I didn't want the attention,
Yeah.
even though some of it was good, and at the time, and I just would rather fly under the radar.
Yeah.
That was just my whole thought process. But I had my mom. She brought me aside because some of the people at Florida State was talking about me opening up and really talking to the media and all those types of things. But she talked to me about it, and we did interviews and all those things to get me prepared for what I was going to be having to do.
Yeah.
My junior year, going from not playing well. I played basketball and had some success there, but being a quarterback of the number one or number two or top five program was a little different. And so I was really trying not to be that guy, meaning having to deal with the media all the time, always going out community, being the face of a program. And I fought it for, a few months or however long it was. And then I started to embrace it because I had to. And it just came with the territory. And once, all the notoriety started coming, the positives, the negatives, and being the quarterback of, as I mentioned, the top ranked team, it just became part of what I had to learn to do. So now, if you see me today with all the media and the podcasts that I do, Believe in the ACC, the speaking engagements that I do, you'll be surprised that was once a part of who I used to be.
Yeah, it's like second nature now. I also wanted to ask you, I'm being from Pensacola. I'm actually from the same neighborhood with Derek Brooks, and
Okay.
and he always told his story about when he's getting recruited by Bobby Bowden. Now, even being a Gator, I always admired Bobby Bowden. He was always one of my favorite coaches. And he always told this recruiting story about how when Bobby Bowden came into his house, he knew he was going to go to Florida State because after hours of conversation and dinner, he looked over and his baby sister, who had been playing with Bobby Bowden all night, was asleep in Bobby Bowden's lap. That's the story I've heard. And so I was wondering, do you have a story of when Bobby Bowden recruited you? What was that like? Is there something that stands out about that?
Well, it was very interesting because we grew up watching Coach Bowden and the Bobby Bowden show.
Yeah.
Because we was from Thomasville, and it came on every Sunday, and we would sit and watch the games. And kind of, grew to know the legendary status of Coach Bowden.
Yeah.
And when he showed up to one of my football games, in the end zone, he was standing in the end zone, and I was, surprised and shocked that the legendary coach was coming to our game to watch me. I knew about him, and of course they were recruiting me, but for him to show up was something totally different.
Yeah.
And then when he came, to the house,
Yeah.
it was another shocking moment because he was in our house, and so, it was nothing earth-shattering. Of course, he went through the whole spiel of, taking care his, like a son and all those types of things. And, talked to my mom, and of course I had my dad there as well. So we went through the whole process, but my whole thing came down to, was he going to allow me to play basketball? Was a big key for me, because I wanted to play basketball in college. He allowed Brad Johnson to do it. That was one of the reasons why he ended up choosing to go to Florida State. So he kept his word. When he said he was going to allow me to do it, and I had to do my part, which was keep a certain GPA, then he would allow me to do it. And so that's what he did, and he was a man of his word, and I'm grateful for that opportunity he gave me.
Wow, that's amazing. I also wanted to ask you, during your run in the NBA, you had a long career in the NBA. Who would you say was your toughest defensive assignment? Because it seemed like you always hung your hat on the defensive end. Who was that person that stands out? If I'm correct, you guarded Iverson at one point as well, right? You crossed over with him a little bit.
Yes, I had a good era. There was Tim Hardaway. He was at the back end of his career, but he was still, pretty good. Mark Jackson, he was a different type of guard, bigger body type guy, and post up. That was his deal.
Yeah.
And then of course Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury was doing that time as well. John Stockton, he was a little bit later, but he was still effective in their system.
Yeah.
Gary Payton was, of course, big during that time. There was in Cleveland, played against Cleveland, Terrell Brandon.
Yeah.
Mark Price was on the back end of his career, but he was still effective when we played them. So there's quite a few guys, I had to, work to guard each and every night, but that was part of my job. That was my role. I understood my role, and that was one of the reasons why I was able to make it 11 years in the NBA, because I understood my role.
Yeah, that's amazing. And last, I'll leave you with this question. I want to ask you. I know the state of Florida college football is fun when all three of the main universities are good and working on all cylinders. In recent years, Florida State's been down. Florida had their time when they were down. Miami's been down. Being right there with your alma mater, what would you say, what stands out that you feel like they need to do to kind of get things back on the right track? And do you think the fan base are going to be patient with the new coach to allow him to do his thing?
Well, we're, no one's going to steal my joy after I win. I don't care who we won against. We finally won a game. So no one's going to steal my joy after this past weekend.
Yeah.
But our biggest issue, I think, once we can settle on a quarterback that can get us to the next level. I know Miami has struggled over the years because they've been trying to find that guy. Florida, when they had quarterback issues, they struggled regardless of what the defense looked like. Defense may have been solid, but they couldn't score any points because they were going through that whole phase after Tebow. And so they struggled for quite some time, regardless of who the coach was. They tried to bring in it didn't really matter. And so whenever they've been able to settle and find a quarterback that can work the system that the coaches have, I think the three teams now have a coach that they feel comfortable with and good with. It's just a matter of getting the support that they need. I know Coach Diaz and Coach Mullen and Coach Norvell is, they're all have the same thought process. And as supporters, we just have to be patient because I feel like, with all three, they could definitely get all three of the universities back to where it was back in, during my time, where all three teams were viable. And when we played one another, we were playing for something. And so I think we can get back there. It's just going to take for us, I know in Florida State, we're just going to have to be patient with the new coach. I think he's doing some great foundational things. He's recruiting well. And it's just going to be a matter of time before we are able to compete at a high level. I don't know how long that time is, but I just do know that we have the right guy in place that everyone can support. And he's going to work to hold the kids accountable. And the kids are going to be responsible because they're going to recruit those types of kids. And he's doing, like I said, he's putting in some great foundational things that's going to have long-term success.
Yeah. Things were great when you had those 1 versus number 2 Florida State matchups, number 2 top 5 Miami versus Florida State. That was a fun time. And it just seems like now, we lose a lot of 5 stars from Dade County to Alabama and Georgia. And I think we gotta get, kids staying home and to the big 3. So.
Well, I mean, now you throw in UCF because they're getting some quality players. Even though Florida has a lot of quality players, I mean, you start taking away some of those top recruits that's going to UCF, USF, FAU, FIU. It's like if you just get 1 or 2 of those guys going to top players going to one of those schools, those are the guys that probably you would normally get at the major universities or 3 major universities that we're talking about. And so that's kind of hurt some of the recruiting, and then you get some of the bigger names, Clemson coming in and getting some of the top tier players, Alabama. And it's not just those schools. You go Big Ten, Ohio State as well. So you're kind of just throwing a monkey wrench in, but the key for us is to really go out of state and get some of those players, because you're not going to always live in Florida. I know when I was in college, most of our players came from Florida, Georgia, Texas, Louisiana. And so those were the main states that, players came from. It really didn't come from anywhere else. I mean, we had a couple of Mississippi, some great players from Mississippi, T-Buck and Kez McCorvey, and some other guys that came through. That was during my time, but, Mississippi was another stop. So we were getting some of the top players from, like, some of the major cities, and that's kind of where I think most of the teams are going today.
Yeah, I agree with you. Swifty?
Charlie, I want to ask you a question about your background. Obviously, you basketball and football player, but you also, you played tennis, played baseball as well. It feels like the high school kid now is specialized at, 7th, 8th grade. What do you tell a kid who actually says, hey, I maybe want to play 2 sports, not only at the high school level, but at the college level?
Well, I encourage kids to play multiple sports, especially early in their middle school, early part of high school, if their situation allows it. And what I mean by that is, someone brought to my attention that if you're at a large high school and you're trying out for the baseball team or the basketball team where the numbers are small, then if you don't specialize or put the time in, you may not make the team. And so I just think it's important. That's another reason why you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, because if you don't make the team, you can go do something else if you want to be an athlete. And so I encourage kids to, just have options. Even though you want to put all your eggs in maybe one basket, you should at least have options if you're thinking about college, especially those student athletes that are very athletic and academic, because you may be able to get some academic money along with your athletic money to be able to get you a scholarship. But if you're just putting all your eggs in one basket, you're really limiting your choices. And so I have that issue now. As a coach, a basketball coach, we may have 12 players on the varsity team, and I can only get one guy to play multiple sports. And of course, he's one of our better players, but the other guys just choose to play basketball. And, it's not because I'm making them do it. That's just what
Yes.
they want to do because they feel like they want to get better. And they're competing against, other players, college, that's trying to get scholarships and those types of things. But I don't think it'll be possible for a student athlete to compete in two sports, especially basketball and football in college, for 4 years. And the reason I say that is because I was fortunate that while I was waiting my time to play quarterback, I got an opportunity to go and make my name in basketball. And so that was one of the reasons why I was able to go back and forth once I got that opportunity, because my first year playing basketball, Coach Bowden allowed me to go and play full time. And so I was able to get my feet wet. I was able to earn my time on the court. But now what you see is if a football player goes out and play basketball, then most times he's coming after the football season, and he's only going to play a certain amount of time. Because when you think about it, basketball players, they start in October preparing for their season. And if you're coming in after football season without an opportunity to establish yourself, you're not going to play much. And if that's your second sport and you're not playing much, then you're really using your time. You feel like I'm wasting my time that I could be using to become better at my main sport.
Yeah, that makes sense. Follow-up question to that. Did that make the recruiting process for you easier? You mentioned earlier that you said, you wanted to play basketball and football. Did that eliminate a lot of schools kind of off the bat who are just saying, hey, play one or the other?
No school asked me to play one or the other. It came down to I had enough schools that were interested, and I kind of shared with them that I wanted to play, and those that didn't want me to play, either start recruiting me or they told me that they would allow me to do it. Not sure if they were going to let me do it, but they told me they would. And so so when it came down to it, really the schools that were in the mix, it really came down to two schools, which was University of Georgia and Florida State.
Well, thank you very much. Lastly, I would like to know, Charlie, if you could go back to your younger self, what advice would you say to you? You've had an incredible journey. What would your advice be to yourself as a younger kid, plus to the youth who are getting into athletics these days?
Well, one thing I would definitely change up is just eating habits. That would be a major thing. That's one of the things I'm talking to my kids, biological kids, or my kids at home, and the kids that I coach. Just the importance of taking care of your body, because a lot of times you really don't understand that until an injury, and even in high school, you really don't understand it because most times you get over the injury, and you just think, okay, well, the time has passed, but it's just like a car, Ferrari. You just don't put anything in the gas tank. There's a certain type of gas that you put in, and I know in high school I wasn't putting the right things in my body to be able to, push me to the next level. Whether it was me being sluggish during, basketball games, not recovering the way I should, after football games or basketball games. I just didn't have that understanding and knowledge. And no one really at that time, during that time, they were talking about the things that they're talking about today. And so that's the one thing, I'm always sharing my guys is making sure they hydrate properly. Just some natural things that they can do for healing, and making sure that they eat the right things, because we want to make sure that we're playing at a high level, and the only way you can do it is if you have the right fuel.
Yeah, absolutely. And being educated about recovery is a big thing. Well, Charlie, we really appreciate you having the time to sit with us and answer our questions. We're going to put up your social handles so that everyone can give you, they can follow you, because you're very inspiring. You give advice, and we appreciate it. And thanks for tuning in to another episode of PlayCallers.
I appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Charlie. God bless.
Thanks, guys.
All righty.